Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Matthew Sanjari, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. I'm super excited about our time together today. And like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story. And our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And we want to talk about your coaching, consulting business, this amazing website you have that we'll put a link to in the description. And, you know, I'm super excited to have you here, bud. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike. It's an honor. It's an honor.
So where were you born?
I was born in beautiful Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So
it is beautiful. It's beautiful.
I'm one of those Canadians.
It's a little cold.
Well, honestly, we're filming this. It's March 7th, and it's a mild winter, and it was still about -5 Fahrenheit at that point.
So are you still up there?
I'm still up there right now. I split my time between here and Florida.
Gotcha. So did you grow up there?
So I'm in Ottawa, which is near Montreal, the capital. But I spent most of my time in Montreal and then moved here with my family.
Gotcha. So when did you move with your family to Ottawa?
So we moved when I was fairly young, and we bounced back to Montreal. And I think I made Ottawa my full-time home probably in, preteens, somewhere around there.
Okay. So if you were going to so you grew up basically Montreal and Ottawa, right?
Yeah.
Kind of split your time. So, so what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I mean, something that I love about Canada is that everybody gets outdoors. It's such a, because again, your winters are long, your summers are short, so you just make the best of it. And so, whether it was in the winters going out and doing winter activities, or in the summers, cottages, the whole bit, everybody wants to be outside. Even if you have people over to your house, it's, hey, let's hang out on the patio, let's hang out in the backyard, let's do things. And so I think something that was a staple of my childhood was we were just all so used to doing things and hanging out that it didn't really feel like we spent a lot of time watching movies or just, consuming content, because we were all just kind of doing stuff all the time. So love that part.
That's cool. So growing up, who was the most influential person to you?
Oh man, that's a great question. I'd say my dad. I love my parents. My father was a refugee, so I'm first generation.
Okay.
And so I saw both my parents come and struggle, work their way up. My dad was an entrepreneur, failed entrepreneur a few times. And so I got to see my dad struggle, build things, perfect things, things not work out. And my dad was my hero because in so many ways, I think it was a lot of the things that I didn't appreciate until I got older, where I started to look back and I was like, man, my dad never told me, even when times were tough, to be generous. Yeah. But I saw him give the shirt off his back for people. Yeah. He started in the restaurant business, and I remember being, 8 or 9, and I'd sit on the freezer in the back. And, one of his locations was in a seedy part of town, we'll say. And people would just come in and he would just give them food, and he would just have conversations with people, and nothing went through the register. And in many ways, there's, comments can be made about business acumen and all of that. But I think that as I got older, I started to appreciate who my dad was. My dad was he loved people. He cared for people. He was generous. And I haven't seen him change in 35 years. And so my dad's very much my hero. And I think that he's probably my role model of where I've learned a lot of these things that I now put into practice and have applied to my own life. I just probably took a little bit longer to get there than most people.
So what country did they come from?
So my dad's from Iran and my mother's from Guyana.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
So they met outside of Canada, or did they meet in Canada?
So they met in Montreal.
Okay.
Yeah, my dad was managing a restaurant. My mom worked upstairs, and they just kind of hit it off, and yeah, and it worked out. But they met in Montreal, and my dad had this grandiose vision of building businesses to try and bring the rest of his family over. A lot of them that were still struggling in the 80s, you know, just a lot of the political upheaval and stuff.
It
And
was
so
rough over there, yeah.
yeah, pretty crazy times. And so, you know, that dragged us around the country a little bit, and finally ended up in Ottawa for a little bit. So that's what they still like that.
You know, I'm gonna point something out. I don't normally do this, but I'm gonna point something out to you that I feel like you've experienced. When your dad would cook and your dad would make food for people, okay, that's actually loving on people. Feeding them is loving on them, right? And that love didn't stop based on how much money people had in their pocket. He just loved people, period, right? And I don't think it's a question of business acumen. I think it's a question of paying it forward. Because I'm, you know, I have people on here all the time that love on people, even though those people don't have anything. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
they have a story that's compelling, and it's amazing, right? It's like I've never told this before. I grew up in Oklahoma. I've told this part. I grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. My grandfather owned the farm, and I was his shadow basically from the time I was really, really young. I mean, weeks old, right? My grandfather and grandmother helped raise me, and I used to watch my grandfather go to the grocery store and buy groceries and take them to a place, to a house where those people didn't have any food. And he never got paid for those things. You know what I mean? And one day I'm working with him many, decades later, I'm working with him, and I look up and this plane, this like Cessna plane comes flying over, single engine Cessna, comes flying over the farm. And it's pretty low altitude. And we're working away doing our thing. And all of a sudden this guy shows up in this truck. And it was the guy who owned the plane, who was flying the plane. He had been in high school or going into high school, and his father had a drinking problem. And his father would drink all of his pay check. And my grandfather put him through high school, paid for his high school, paid for a lot of groceries to keep him fed, that kind of thing, keep his mom, sustained and everything. And this guy came back after all this time and was a millionaire several times over in the Pacific Northwest in timber, and came back to thank my grandfather personally.
Wow.
Those are the kinds of things that I'm telling you, that's the kind of thing that's going to come back to your dad tenfold. You know what I mean? It's like, it's just cool. So anyway, yeah. I just think that's awesome. And you got to witness that. That's even cooler as far as I see it. The fact that you got to see that love that your dad has for people in action, that's my goodness. I mean, invaluable. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead. I'm getting all into this thing.
No, I think that's amazing. I might start interviewing you now.
Oh, I just think it's awesome, man. I love your dad. You know what I mean?
It's incredible. And again, he very much has been a role model for me, not just in life and being a man, being a human, but again, in business. Yeah. My father actually had a stroke late last year, and he's on the road to recovery. He's doing well. But that whole journey where time just stood still for a month and we put everything on pause. I was in the hospital every day. By week 2, I was like at a loss. I remember putting this post up on social media. I was at a loss because I walked in one day and the staff kept making jokes that my father was like a king because people were driving 10 hours to come see him and bring him things, bring him food. Someone literally drove 9 or 10 hours just to come see him for a couple hours, and then got back in the car and drove. And it was in that moment that I was like, man, I'm like, forget the balance sheets, forget the money. I'm like, this is his legacy.
Yeah.
And I can only hope to have
a
smidgen of that legacy. That's my hope. If I can just be a portion. And so for me, seeing these things that I learned by osmosis, right? It's not, me and my dad have had incredible conversations, but you know, it's not like he ever sat there and was like, these are the 7 things that are going to help you succeed in business.
Right.
Or in life, right. And so those things that I learned from osmosis that I see coming out with my clients, I see coming out in my life. I'm just, I don't know if I even have the words to say how grateful I am, how grateful I really am. Because at the end of the day, it's just things that I probably take for granted that are just second nature now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, man, it's so cool. It's so cool to see the results of that legacy, that all those times that he paid it forward. You know what I mean? Because that's exactly what you're seeing, and that you saw it in action. You saw him paying it forward, and then you saw the results of it. And that's life coming full circle. And it's exactly why we do this podcast. It's exactly why we do this. You know, this is too cool. I am seriously tickled right now. I know you can't tell because I hide it well. Okay. So in high school, did you have a favorite subject?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know that I had a favorite subject. I mean, to be honest, I was sports obsessed then, and I'm sports obsessed now. So I'd probably say gym class would have probably been my favorite. But I honestly just kind of liked everything. I think for me, as long as it wasn't visual arts, because I can't draw a stick man to save my life, I was probably pretty, I was probably, we just grew up in a family that prioritized learning. And so I was always pretty eager to just kind of hop in and test myself.
That's cool. So did you play a sport at all in high school?
Yeah, I played a little bit of everything. Played football, volleyball.
Do you have a favorite
soccer,
sport?
Football to play was
What position did you play?
Played running back, and I played strong safety. Yeah.
So what did you enjoy the most about playing running back and strong safety?
Oh man, it's funny. I actually don't know that I enjoyed the positions all that much. I think the thing about football that I loved was I played a lot of sports, and there was nothing like the camaraderie in football.
Yeah.
Like it just felt like when we were on the field, it's like, okay, like it doesn't matter that you and I had an argument last week or that I don't like this guy, man, I'm going to go block for you. You're going to block for me. I got you. And I think that, again, just growing up in a household where leadership and, friendship and relationship was so important. Some of those friendships that I built there were just, so paramount. And so for me, football, I mean, I love sports. I love, realistically, I would have played at any position they put me in.
Yeah.
But this idea of being on a team and, growing together, developing together, that was something just from young that was the most appealing thing to me. Like going to practice.
There's just something about the sport, right? It's like Kenny Chesney wrote and sang a song called "The Boys of Fall," and it's just, there's just something about it. There's just something about, so I'm actually the voice of my kids' high school football team. And my kids are graduated from college now and off in their jobs and, living their lives, right? I've been the play-by-play announcer. So when they have their home games, I'm the guy up in the press box with the microphone doing the play-by-play. And I love it. I've been doing it for like 11 years now. It's crazy. So yeah, a lot of fun. And I absolutely love seeing how close they get, how tight knit these teams are. And, this years ago, we used to announce these football games, and I had to get used to announcing games that were 55-0. And we were the nothing and they were 55. And about 5 years ago, they went out and got this coach who's been on our podcast, Coach John Goodman. Absolutely amazing man, and an amazing coach. And he turned this program around, and they won their league championship 3 years in a row, 2020, 2021, and 2022. They're just champions. The guy's just a champion, and he does it the right way, right? And now I'm calling games that are 55-0, and we're 55 and they're nothing, and that's really cool. Versus the other way, right?
Circle, right?
You know, yeah. Versus the other experience. You know,
Yeah.
Coaching is a big deal in anything, but it's a really big deal in football. And the best part about it is he promotes that closeness. He promotes that camaraderie. And these guys will be friends for life. You know, they'll absolutely be friends for the rest of their lives. So it's a lot of fun to watch. So you graduate high school. Where do you go?
So I went to St. Patrick's High here in Ottawa.
Yeah.
And then from there, I kind of took my time. I was going to hop into university. I had some options. I was kind of unsure about what I wanted to do. I mean, the dreams of playing football died pretty quickly when I stopped growing, it felt like. But I just kind of wrestled, hopped into the workforce. I knew I was going to go to school. I just couldn't make up my mind. You know, yeah. I had all the people in my life that had opinions on what I should do.
Oh, sure.
And I finally settled on, and I was like, you know what? I actually want to be a pastor. I want to be a minister. And so I went to school for it. And that's what I hopped into. Yeah. Yeah. That little bit of a curve in the story, but yeah, I did that. And honestly, it was incredible. I made some lifelong friends. I learned a lot. And I purposely went to a school where I didn't know anybody, and I didn't even necessarily align with a lot of the beliefs. I wanted to challenge myself, put myself in an experience and learn. And it was an amazing experience. It really was.
That's how you grow, man.
Yeah.
That's how you grow. You got to stretch yourself. You got to go somewhere where you don't know anybody, right? And you got to stretch yourself. You got to learn. That's cool. So you go to school to become a pastor. And at some point, you decide not to do that, right?
Well,
walk us through that.
So when I finished school, I actually came back. My goal wasn't to come back to Ottawa. I went to school in Vancouver on the West Coast, and I was spending a lot of time in Vancouver, Seattle, Canada, the US, the whole bit. And I didn't want to come back because I'm a coastal guy. I'm an ocean guy. And I was like, it's beautiful. And then a couple of friends called me up and they said, hey, we're thinking of starting a church. Do you want to come? And I was like, oh, this could be fun. This could be appealing. And so I came back. I was like, oh, we'll do this for a few years. And ended up starting a church. The church took off. That was an amazing experience. And I basically lived for a bunch of years with, being a pastor and also working a full-time job at the same time, and, bivocational, doing that whole thing. And I was young. I was in my, early 20s, having time in my life. And then about 2 years in, I had a great job, but about 2 years in, I had this like crazy traumatic car accident that changed my life and kind of shifted the whole course of what I kind of had planned for my life.
So tell us about that. So you get into a car accident, and it changed your trajectory in terms of what you decided to do. Walk us through that. Yeah.
So again, at this point, I'm pastoring at a church. I've got an amazing family, excellent friends. I've got some good roots. My job, I shouldn't have even had. I was traveling across North America doing public speaking. It was really, really cool. And then one night I was just driving home late at night in the country from a girl's house that I was dating, and 2 horses jumped out onto the road at the last second.
Wow.
So I was driving to give people context. I was driving a Honda CRV, so an SUV, pretty good size, and didn't know much about horses. These horses were bigger than the SUV.
Yeah.
I think they call them Clydesdales.
Oh yeah. And those are huge. And they don't do well with cars, when they're in the
so pitch black, it's nighttime. There's no lights, it's the country. And so they just jumped onto the road. I hit them both. Car completely totaled. When I had to force myself out of the car when it stopped moving because everything had bent. When they went back to measure, it was 3 inches, and I would have been dead. 3 inches. It's a miracle that the car didn't swerve into the ditch because we're in the country, ditches on both sides. And so, in the aftermath, the coming days, I started to realize, a few things were off, but I was young, dumb, naive. And I said, hey, you know what? Like, okay, it was a car accident. I survived, things will be fine.
Yeah.
And days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months. And next thing you know, I started to get these really bad headaches and chronic pain started to set in. And then I started to find myself at work and at church and at friends' houses hiding in the bathroom for hours at a time because I would just get this pressure in my head and I couldn't do anything. I have to lie down. I couldn't talk to people. And it became so untenable. I started missing work that, I quit my job. I didn't know about disability, didn't know about anything.
Yeah.
And so I ended up quitting my job, and I went into the darkest season of my life where doctors' reports are piling up and telling me that, what I've got is serious. I've got chronic physical pain, headaches that nobody can really answer to. I've got depression. Many of these things I still struggle with today. So it's not like they've gone away 12 years later.
How long ago was this?
12 years, 2012.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, so I'm starting to go through these things. I'm living at my parents' house on a basement. I'm not seeing people, and I'm an extrovert. I need to be seeing people 7 days a week, connecting with people like that. And it was just a really, really dark time. I'm unemployed now. I'm not going to church. Not hanging out with people. It just felt like life hit a standstill, and all that potential and all that dreams and all that ambition I had just it died in that moment. And for a year, I basically felt that I was like, my life is over.
Wow. So what turned it around? What got you to the place where, so walk us through that. So you go through that year and are you not going to church because of light sensitivity and sound sensitivity and that kind of thing? Or is it?
So it's not so much the light and sound. I would get these headaches that would just incapacitate me, right? I couldn't move, right? If I stood up, I'd start to get dizzy. And then even in moments where I felt good, now I had this mental anger where I'm starting to get upset. I'm angry at life. And that's not me, right? Yeah. That's I'm starting to become a real victim, if I can use that language, right? Yeah. Where I started to really embody, this is so unfair. Life is so unjust. How can this happen to me? Yeah. And so about a year and a bit after the accident, I'm not working. Again, I'm also balancing this idea of I need to make money, but who in their right mind is going to hire someone that they don't know when they're going to show up to work, is unreliable, and might have to lie down at any point of the day.
Right.
For hours. And so I had a friend call me up and said, hey, you know what? I know you're good with computers. I'm working for a small business and we need help with some of the computer systems. Could you come help out? And I was like, yes, please. Desperate for some income. I need a break. Yeah. So I go in and I start talking to the small business owner, and we kind of hit it off. And he said, hey, do you want to go grab lunch? Lunch or coffee is one of the two. And so we went out, and he said, hey, I've got a marketing person in place, but I don't really like what they're doing. I feel like I'm wasting my money. Do you know anything about marketing? And I was like, I like marketing. I don't know that I know anything about it. Didn't go to school for it. And he said, well, can you just give it a look and let me know? And so anyways, went through it, gave him some feedback. And he said, okay, I'm going to hire you to do my marketing. Didn't go to school for marketing. Liked it. Didn't have any of the underpinning. So I took that money and I invested it to go teach myself marketing. And that's how I started my first business.
Wow.
And so now I have a business. It's not overly.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.